Okay, perfect. So I'm going to go, like I said, onto LinkedIn, chat, and all the chats. I'm just going to go on all the chats if I can. It might be a little hard for me to keep up with the chats, but I'm going to talk about this release. So, long story short, Underground Nexus. What is this thing that I'm doing? Imagine if AWS or Azure was an open source platform that also worked with AWS and Azure, or both, right? So, imagine if you didn't have to pay $30 a month for AWS or Azure or whatever that sort of thing is. Now, the downside of that is it comes with having to do a little bit of your own hosting and stuff. But what if your servers were basically apps, and what if AWS, instead of being a thing that you log into and pay rented amounts of compute for, what if that was an app that you just download, and boom, you just downloaded AWS, you're using it, and then it has the ability to scale out into a public cloud. What if you could do all that, right? So what we've put together, or what I've put together in all this time, is the way this works is this is a website. So I created this app, and it works like a virtual machine. It's an operating system, works like a virtual machine, looks like a virtual machine, feels like a virtual machine, except for it's web browser accessible, it's password protected. So if someone wanted to just kind of try to swoop in on this on this website and try to come and hack into your little website virtual machine, since it's Cloud Building Toolbox, let me just kind of show you what that would look like. So let's see. Any old browser. Oh, what am I doing? No, I just want to show this security feature. Close tabs. Let's just go into incognito mode. So it's password protected, so if some random person came in here and was trying to like get into your little VM, people have seen login screens before, that part's not all that exciting. But there might be that question of like, oh, but you're putting like an RDP session just like out to the World Wide Web. Why even this format of a login screen? Realistically, you don't want people to know that there's an entire like desktop behind this URL. So it's best to it just doesn't even let people who don't belong in your cloud development space into your little VPS. So anyways, this item right here is downloaded. This is something that you download, and it can be hosted anywhere. And notice that it has resources in it like Visual Studio Code right off the bat. And then it has a bunch of pre-built apps inside of it, which are tab accessible apps. So I'm calling them taps. And most of the home for all of the engineering for this platform is all handled through GitLab. So in order to work with this platform, use this platform, then you would connect to, you would get a GitLab account. GitLab lets you have free accounts, so get a free GitLab account, or you could, if you want to pay, that's up to you, but free is fine. You can be free forever. Use a free GitLab account forever. And we're running a closed beta in the Cloud Underground DevSecOps Dojo. If anyone wanted to get access to being able to download this thing, that's basically a cloud building virtual machine that actually doesn't even use virtualization. Imagine if a virtual machine didn't use virtualization at all, right? It's what this is. So in the context of education, for a lot of people this isn't relevant and isn't going to help anyone, but the real kicker here is this is something that, let's say you were going to try to learn cybersecurity. I teach cybersecurity. And someone says, oh, you need to run virtual machines to take this lesson. And then you go and you try to run a virtual machine and it says, can't run this virtual machine to learn cybersecurity or data science or whatever you're trying to learn, because you don't have this hardware functionality. So you're like, oh, I don't have this hardware functionality. So you go look for something. And the problem then is you can't learn some of the skills that you can learn with a tool like this, because all of a sudden you have to have a special type of hardware that has something called virtualization for those of you who aren't technical. And then there's a cost barrier to education to the education of getting to learn some of these things that makes basically like trying to learn how to build or engineer cloud effectively very expensive. So if you're not swimming in the dough or in cash, then there you go. So anyways, this app, the way that it's accessible is if you have a GitLab free account, then it's free. And then we have this app that, because it works directly with GitLab, once you download this thing, then it'll use your GitLab account to log you in. So you can just click on log me in with my GitLab account, and boom, you are now using the Underground Nexus app powered by GitLab. The automation's handled by GitLab, all those little things that make it work under the hood. The stuff that I could teach it to you, or it could all just be orchestrated and automated so that you don't have to spend 5 years learning it. You can just start using it. Especially if you're a developer and you're trying to learn development, you don't want to spend 5 years learning how to set up your stage to try to learn how to have something to develop on. You want to just start developing. Or if, once again, if you're trying to learn these things, we make it to where all the resources you need to build cloud are right here, one-stop shop. As a matter of fact, we even use S3 with this, S3 resources, which is an Amazon resource. So if you are an Amazon AWS user, or if you're trying to get into things like Amazon AWS, S3 buckets are a big thing these days, and you probably want to learn how S3 buckets work. And also, if you are working with building cloud, you're going to be inevitably most likely dealing with S3 buckets, securing S3 buckets, all that exciting stuff that, unless you're building cloud, nobody cares about. But if you're building cloud, we care about it. It's good stuff, right? So some other neat features that kind of go into the Underground Nexus is it's designed to be secure, which is why it's kind of all running behind a browser, because you could be thinking, well, why not, virtual machines, they work just fine if you can run a virtual machine. But this other thing is it's a portable security box. It's basically a vault. So when you're typing in, like, especially if you're working with, like, if you're a developer, it's the DevSecOps tool after all. DevSecOps is supply chain work. We've heard about things like the Colonial Pipeline and stuff like that. You don't want to have a supply chain getting breached. So if you're trying to learn how to build secure pipelines, building secure pipelines is hard. This is how you build secure pipelines. One methodology, one way to do that. And so this is a tool for things like building secure supply chains. Yeah, people don't want unsecure supply chains. That's dangerous. So where basically this thing also right out of the box has some default monitoring functionality. And in order to, let's say that you wanted to get access to this domain right here that lives inside of this little VM, it actually lives inside of this pie hole right here. So if you don't, if there's someone who wanted to come in once again and try to sneak in on your hidden development center here, your GitLab powered development center where you keep all your private code, all your private projects, all the stuff that you want secure that people can't get to. It's like a vault, like a bank for your development, your practice, your skills, your portfolio building. If you're a cloud builder, that's your life. If you're building some code, that's your life, if that's your career. So we have this thing that helps you right away just monitor all of your resources. And oddly enough, this is a DNS server. So this whole kit so happens to be a DNS server. So you can actually access this domain outside of just using the URL, but the only way to access all of these items without the URL is to actually use the Underground Nexus as a DNS server, which is once again security first. It creates a hidden, invisible domain that lives on your network that's only accessible if you decide to turn it into the DNS server of the host that you want it to work with, which also means that you can block people from being able to access your secure center here. So in terms of control for like blocking who has access to your resources or your projects or your business resources, once again, this is supply chain stuff, and we work with like things like NIST research, right? So if we work with things like NIST research, we want to keep that stuff safe and secure. So anyways, then your free GitLab account is where you can make sure that all the resources you wanted to access. Where do you get the stuff that we're going to be working on? We just started launching our Cloud Underground resources. Our server farm lives both locally and in public cloud at the same time. And so this right here is connected to all of our public cloud resources. So if anyone wants to get into our public cloud, we pay thousands of dollars a month so that our members can use this for free. And then for people who are using this not for research, so our server farm is free for researchers. So if someone wants to come do cloud research with us, that's no cost for you. You can join the DevSecOps Dojo and do cloud research and learn for free. It's for people learning or for practitioners researching. Either way, if you're a researcher, we're going to go ahead and let this be a free thing for you. Yes, we do pay a lot of money for it, but yes, we are happy to let people use it for educational purposes at no cost to you. And then the way that we fund it is by, let's say someone is doing commercial business, then they're going to have to pay because we have to secure their pipeline, make sure that it's all working, make sure their supply chain's safe and secure and all that good stuff. So we're keeping... We're funding this by letting people's secure pipelines and using it for business be what funds it. And if you're just trying to learn the stuff, we're not going to charge people to learn these things when you don't even know how it works. It like perpetuates the issue that we have where there's like skill gaps in cloud, cybersecurity, tech, all these things. There's major skill gaps. Why do we have skill gaps? Cost is a major barrier to entry when people can't even afford to learn the stuff. So no, even though we might pay a certain amount of money, we can afford it because we work with people who can afford it and can afford to help us continue to support resources. At this point, we can support like at least, I don't even know if we can support like millions of users, and I don't even know how we would find millions of users on our platform. We just finished getting this situated, so a month ago that was not the case. We didn't have infrastructure enough, configured enough, and secured enough to host even 5 users reasonably. Now we've got it all set up. We scale from local cloud to public cloud for like unlimited scale. It's kind of like all those things that I talked about. Is like you can start from home with a Raspberry Pi. That's actually how we started. We started building all of this from home with the Raspberry Pi, and then we built a whole little data center, and it funded us to be able to expand our pipeline quite a bit, where we have a dedicated fiber line, and now we're approaching having 4 active sites that we run at like a distributed DevSecOps service mesh that lives over going on soon 4 physical locations, and then that's then scales up into public cloud infrastructure from there, and we keep our secure code in the local mesh managed by AI security, all that good stuff. Anyways, but that's how we built it. But it all started on a Raspberry Pi. All started simple single Raspberry Pi. So we're trying to give people the same opportunity to like start as small as you can afford. Can you afford? What can you afford? If you can afford free, we're funding you. That's where it is at. So if you can afford a free GitLab account, anyone can afford a free GitLab account, then that allows us to give you the resources that we pay insane amounts of money for, so that we can help people. And then you build the skills, then you can also help out, which is why it kind of works out for everyone. So we need the talent. Everyone needs the talent right now. And the industry pays so well that we can afford to fund folks now. It's been a long haul, long time coming. So anyways, that resource is there for DevSecOps Dojos, that's members, that's free. And then that then allows you to, I'm going to be adding the code to download the actual app. Once again, it's kind of like AWS, but you download it, pull it down from GitLab. It's like an open source AWS. We're trying to keep everything as open source as possible for as many things as we can as possible. Once again, trying to make it easier to build those skills, make it easier to build those careers, make it easier to build those minimum viable products. So getting further into that, what if you're trying to engineer straight up stacks? You can do that too. Engineer some stacks, engineer some services. That thing is loading, but let me move over to a different menu. So like we can take a look at services that are getting engineered, because it's got Oh, we have so many things going on. So anyways, so it actually has an API portal in it. So for those who are developers, once again, this is made for people who are trying to get into more DevSecOps or already into it. If you're already working in DevSecOps, you probably know what an API is. So we use Trafic as an API portal. It works well for us. I'm a fan of it. I've had a good time using it. And that also is what allows us to keep the passwords secure. So if anyone's also trying to learn how proxies work or learn how to do cryptography for like, I did all of our cryptography. I like cryptography. It's kind of fun. You can use Trafic to do crypto engineering, not crypto like cryptocurrency. So I do cryptology, and I also teach cryptology, which is like the study of cryptography. It's cryptology, and then you build new things building its cryptography. So it's jargon, language, I don't know, all that good stuff. But for anyone who's into that sort of thing, Trafic and API portals are it's a skill. And for those who think it's fun, and you can go and create routes and things like that. And the underground Nexus is load balanced using this API portal, and it also works in conjunction with this Pi-hole DNS server right here. So for those who, now I'm starting to get into the technical weeds here because this is where it starts to get crazy. I'll whiteboard this out too because this is crazy. Oh, what is this refreshing? I want this thing to load. Oh, it did load. Containers. Anyways, this thing has Docker built into... Oh, come on, you can do it. This thing has Docker built into it. And right now, I have been making changes to this one particular app, and so I'm not... Like I said, this is all in the... Oh, there it is. So that one's a little slow with the configuration I have this thing set up on, which I'm changing. But anyways, you can do all of your engineering basically in the little engineering center. It's where you can engineer containers. You can make your own containerized apps, all that good stuff. You can add new containers, build stuff. Building stuff's fun. I like building stuff. Why not? That's always cool. So anyways, we then have the wonderful and decently known Grafana that lives in here, because if you're trying to build cloud resources, you want observability, and what that means is you want monitoring, make sure that you can see what's going on with your stuff, the ability to do debugging, all that interesting stuff. So that brings us to... I will be doing a lot of trainings on this. This is just like this is the first time I've ever shown this thing I've been working on. So Grafana works with Loki, and they now have a free forever access account, and then you can also build your own self-hosted resources here and combine that with your free forever access. And what this gives you is it gives you Loki and Prometheus. I don't know if it gives you other resources with that, but it makes it easier. Oh, I don't know about easier, but it's configuration compute that you can use for free forever for 3 users, 50 gigabytes of logs. I would say this is good. Anyone who's just trying to learn this stuff or just launch a small business and just get going, this is plenty. This is plenty of what you could possibly need just to launch. And, you know, for if you stay like a small business forever, this is probably free forever is fine for your monitoring, your security. Now, of course, if you start getting into things being way more, you start like your company starts growing. Well, if your company starts growing, you can afford the expensive stuff, so then it doesn't matter that you have the limits. You probably need to start paying for services if you're doing that, or paying for labor or services. You're either going to have to hire developers to start building some of this stuff out for you custom, or you pay for the services. But the reality is this is designed for building minimum viable products, starting new projects. Like I said, we started all of this on a Raspberry Pi, and now it scales out to, it's a hybrid farm. So this runs on, because people are like, well, what operating system do you use? Well, our service mesh uses multiple OS 10, multiple Windows 11, multiple Windows 10, multiple Windows server operating systems of different ones, multiple Linux, Kali, that includes like Kali Linux, Parrot OS, Ubuntu, Debian flavors in there, but it is all orchestrated and inventoried. So it's not just random. And so we prefer what is called agnostic development. So if someone says, well, what's your favorite operating system? All of them. Or what's your favorite hardware? It depends on what your goal is. Or what's your favorite monitoring tool? Whatever runs. That's kind of how I am. Is like, what's best for the use case? Put them all together. Why GitHub instead of GitLab? Actually, both. So believe it or not, this actually integrates with a number of things just because of the nature of what GitLab is. So because of GitLab and how it works, it will integrate with Bitbucket. It will integrate with GitHub. And because it'll integrate with GitHub, you can set up integrations with Docker. And finally, one of the things that we're adding in here is we're going to be adding resources for working with Zapier. So for people who like code, Zapier lets you work with both Python and Java. And then for people who don't like code, it lets you basically like click code, make your clicks, and clicking instead of coding. Hey, who knew? So Zapier is just an interesting resource. So one of the things I like about Zapier is, since we're kind of creating an environment where people who might not know any development might come in and be in a place with people who know a lot of development, we want to make it so that people who know or enjoy development can work on teams or meet people who need people who do development, things like that, where one person might have like resources, they run a business, things like that, and maybe they can pay for help and stuff like that, and they couldn't code to save their life, not their preference, not their interest, but they could use some zaps, right? And maybe they use zaps all day long, and they're like, maybe they're like, I want to know how to use GitLab with Google Sheets or Discord, right? Maybe you're trying to integrate GitLab with Discord. I mean, it really depends on what your goal is, what you're trying to do, right? But then the benefit here then is, why Zapier for people who code and Zapier for people who don't code? You can use GitLab with Zapier to build Zapier-based projects where, let's say that there's someone who doesn't code, then someone can build a Zapier zap for them, and then they can pay the person who coded it, and then once that zap's built, that person who paid the developer got paid, and then the person who doesn't like to code got code. It's business, right? And so that's open trade at the end of the day. Anyways, that's how open trade works. But once again, this whole thing, it's kind of like a virtual machine replacement. It's lightweight. It's just a container. You just download it. It's like if a virtual machine were a downloadable application, and then you can come in and test all of your applications, all that good stuff. And you can store and centralize all of your repositories. Now, what does that even look like from an architecture standpoint? So now that's like the visual from the top end. So I'm going to kind of draw out an architecture map, I guess, of the underground Nexus. So the way that the underground Nexus is designed, actually it's kind of complicated, so I have a reference point because I was like, I'm not going to remember this. This is crazy. It's one of the... Okay, so let me glance at chats real quick just to see if anyone's had any questions. If anyone has any questions, certainly feel free to ask while I'm doing this. Oh. Let's see. I thought I was live on LinkedIn. I am live on LinkedIn. I don't even know how to check the LinkedIn chat. Oh, here we go. Now I can see the LinkedIn chat. Merry Christmas, yeah. Sorry, for some reason I thought that I was watching this for us. Let's see. Oh yeah. Zapier reminds me of Azure Functions with non-code. Yeah, Zapier's kind of crazy. It's like I never really thought about it. Zapier kind of does remind me of Azure Functions a little bit because it reminds me also of like OpenFOSS. So LinkedIn discussions. It's like OpenFOSS and Zapier are a lot alike in some ways because you can kind of code your functions and kind of build these serverless designs using Zapier. Now, OpenFOSS is a little more open source, but you got to pay if you want all those premium Zapier features, because Zapier you can use it for free. But if you start wanting to kind of get into it and you start wanting to use more of their resources and all that stuff, then all of a sudden Zapier starts costing money. I guess this probably has a paid service too. I don't even know if OpenFOSS has a paid. Let's see, how do they fund their stuff? Oh, it's cloud native landscape, that's right. So I guess they get their funding through the landscape. Where are they on the landscape? So they fall under... Anyways, I can do this on my own time. It does... Zapier reminds me a little bit of OpenFOSS. It's... Learning cloud's a bear. It's like one of the most overwhelming things I've ever heard of in my life. Because you have to learn so many random things and it all has to work together. And it's all complicated. All of it. None of it's not complicated. So, let's see. I got my reference point. So now that I have my reference... Wait, I thought I had my reference point. Where did that go? Too many things. This is why building cloud is chaos. But we are, speaking of chaos, we're going to be doing some chaos engineering in the future soon too. Oh, here we go. Now I got my reference point. Okay, so I'm going to draw out the architecture of the underground Nexus. So let's kind of start out where the user is. Just to keep it simple. So we got the user. And I guess we'll just represent the user as a this wonderful individual right here with arms. We got to make sure that this individual has arms, because if they don't have arms, it should probably be just fine if they didn't too. So anyways, it can work whether you have arms or not. So let's see. Underground So the underground Nexus is kind of like, like I said, it's just like a virtual machine in an application, which is just, if you have the money to afford like virtual machine farms and stuff like that, then great. If you're trying, you can actually run these on VMs too. So if you have a virtual machine and you wanted to know if you could figure out how to run something that's kind of like a virtual machine in a virtual machine, you can build things that kind of work, feel, and look like VM server farms with these little Nexus apps. It's kind of how they work. It's based on containerization. It's Docker based and Kubernetes based. It's not, you know, it's a toolbox. It's a toolbox with various resources from the cloud native landscape, all put together for you so that you don't have to know everything. So in terms of the underground Nexus app, how is it accessed? It's accessed with a GitLab account. So I guess maybe the more appropriate way to design it is the user has a GitLab account, and then in the GitLab account we provide access to the underground Nexus app and resources, and access to our server resources. And the Underground Nexus is going to remain open source. Right now it's in closed beta, so eventually we'll probably just make it to where you can just go and get it without being part of the DevSecOps dojo, all that good stuff. But whenever you have like a new release, having no control over your new release is just a bad idea. There will be a day when we've tested things a lot more than day one. This thing's never existed before and closed beta first. So anyways, got our user, GitLab account, they get the Underground Nexus. Now how do you use it, right? The ways to use it is that you can use Kubernetes or Docker. So I'll just say Docker is my... It can run Kubernetes, so it depends on what your needs are. If you have an ecosystem that's Kubernetes based, you can install it in there. But otherwise I'd say use Docker to kind of run the resources. So then what you'll do is you'll go from GitLab, get your resources from GitLab, and then you would have to have Docker generally installed. I would recommend using, say, like a Raspberry Pi or Docker Desktop, the application. We'll get into like what all can you do with this thing over time, but I just got to start talking about like what is this thing. So Raspberry Pi or Docker Desktop are the applications you can use for that. They work fine. Or of course, if you are someone who's been using Kubernetes, Kubernetes is, if you've never touched any of these things, stay far away from Kubernetes. I don't know if I would consider Kubernetes beginner friendly. So I would say, for now, let's just say Docker. And those who are more advanced understand why I'm deleting that. Why I'm deleting Kubernetes on there. So it is a container image-based application, for those who know what that means. Runs in Docker. I would recommend using Docker Desktop or Raspberry Pi. And then the way that it works from there is, let's kind of take a look at, let's see. So this is what it looks like when you're using it. Now let's take a look at our architecture. So let's go back to user. So when you're using your GitLab account, if you sign up for our program, then what that does is that adds you to, so like the DevSecOps dojo, the only location where Underground Nexus app lives right now. So it's all cloud, well, it's a cloud native architectures, but anyways, when you go and connect to GitLab and we add you to that group, it drops you into access to our Cloud Underground hybrid service mesh cloud resources. We do have a lot of various compute resources, especially for those who are trying to learn. So if you are in the DevSecOps dojo, I'll get into that. So one of the big ones is we're going to be doing a lot of like different ways to learn DevSecOps. The base one is we're going to be using economics, like learning economics as a means of learning DevSecOps, because if I could teach skills all day long, but if you don't know how those skills transfer into monetization, I'm limiting your ability to perform competitively against other people who do this stuff. So I want to teach how to monetize. So we're going to basically work with crypto, not for like how to get rich or anything like that, but crypto as an educational tool, because it's something that anyone globally can use and trade and learn economics with. So crypto is going to be used as a development economics tool, also because you can develop crypto. So it's like, well, what are we going to do? What's something that we can develop that also allows us to learn how monetization and trade works? Because it's, if you can build an app, that's the beginning of it, but then you got to learn how it's monetized, and then how open trade and trade is managed with applications. So we're using crypto to solve like how do you do that. And then for those who are a little more serious and want to get into like making cash, like straight cash, we're also focusing on things like bug bounties with this. So you can use this as our resources for bug bounty hunting. And we are also doing research soon. So recently I just submitted research to NIST. So let's see. If anyone were to go hunt me down, if you're in the DevSecOps Dojo, you've seen this. If you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see this, but I just updated all of my notes for the submission of... So I've been submitting research to NIST, basically, and anyone who's had some feedback, I've included some of that feedback in here too for NIST. So if anyone's into research and doing R&D, all that good stuff, that's something that we do. Maybe what I do is drop this resource in all of the chats. So let me be specific about this resource. The Underground Nexus is built around these concepts. It's a DevSecOps cloud-native, edge-based cloud engineering, hybrid cloud engineering toolbox for things that are the kinds of concepts listed out in this. This is a really complex thing. So if you click on this, you'll find that it takes you to a super long, like 4-hour video that's just really chunky about this stuff. Super chunky video. So let me drop that in the chats just for a reference point. And then let's see, I'll drop that in all the chats, I suppose. I gotta get it to the Facebook chat now. Okay. I hope I'm not messing my audio up. What's going on with this? It's probably like duplicate sound or something if I don't... Oh, it's muted. That's good. Okay. It's for the best. Alright, so anyways... Let me just mute my desktop audio so it doesn't get confusing. Alright. So I just added that to all of the chats. Oh, except one. I forgot one. There we go. Now it's in all the chats. So this is sort of like that document's like I said, it's a beefy, chunky, deep dive into the concepts. So when you're using, say, as a user, your GitLab account, and you're connecting to where the app lives, all of our resources, all that good stuff, and you're using maybe Docker Desktop for all of your resources, what's happening on our end is we have first, the thing that you connect to is our public cluster farm. which our public cluster farm is pretty much what all of our users connect to. This is, I don't know if this is what we pay the most for. We pay a fair amount for it, but this is what you're connecting to with your free GitLab account, which is why you can just keep using a free GitLab account. And then the resources that we manage here, if you're in the DevSecOps Dojo for now, once again, it's closed beta. We'll get things more open source as we're going, but things take time and it costs a whole lot of money, so we can't just start giving all these things away for free because we gotta afford them in the first place. So anyways, we have a public cluster farm. And then from here, if I were to arrange this right here, where this Docker is the user's computer, so let's see, Docker. So on the left, we have an example of the architecture, like when the user's using things, you can take the underground Nexus app that you get from GitLab, and then you just install it into Docker from GitLab. You just pull it on down, basically. Little arrow, why not? Why not make an arrow? So anyways, this is kind of showing, you know, you set up your GitLab account, you set this up, and what's happening is at the user's home, this is basically kind of like an underground cloud. I'm gonna call it an underground cloud because it's kind of what it is. I don't know. It's an on-prem cloud at your place, basically, where you're using GitLab as a public cloud for yourself. So then your free GitLab account is kind of like your public cloud, and then your Docker is like a little underground cloud for you, where you can scale out as much of your data center resources as you want, and then you can continue to use resources up here. Now, the way that we have ours set up is, let's see. We then have a similar design where the stuff that everyone accesses doesn't, the way that it touches our primary infrastructure is we have like physical locations in a mesh, like a distributed mesh. So how many locations do we have? We have at least like going on 4. So we have our DevSecOps service mesh down here that we host everyone on, that we run runners from, all that good stuff. All of it's technically a DevSecOps service mesh. So that's our cluster farm. It all runs over a DevSecOps service mesh. So really, what we're doing is giving everyone the power to run the same architecture that we grow and scale. You got to start somewhere. We started with the Pi, and then you just scale up and up and up and up as you grow. We went from being able to host, like, we could only host people locally in like classrooms originally back in 2019. Fast forward to 2021, like end of 2021, walking into 2022, we can officially host at least probably like 5 million to 10 million users. I don't even think we can support that many from like a staffing standpoint. I think realistically, how many people could we support right now? Probably like, in terms of like quality time, I like customer service. Well, our automated services, yeah, people can, like all of our self-pay stuff. So yeah, if people just work with our self-pay stuff, we could work with millions of people already. But Really, we only have like a team of 3 or 4 people, like full time. We work with a lot of people who work with us and do things with us, which is how we get so much done, because we have a lot of business partners at this point and work with a lot of people. But just like your Docker down here, we turned that, like, so that's like whatever you have in your home, your Raspberry Pi or your Docker desktop or all of the above. Like, you can slowly turn that into a DevSecOps service mesh if you wanted to, using the Underground Nexus. We use the Underground Nexus to make it easier and faster to build out a hybrid cloud farm, open source. And let's see, so that would be our underground cloud. So we have our, I guess our on-prem, it's basically just on like a distributed on-prem. So I guess I'll just add up here. So it's sort of a, let's see, underground clouds are distributed on-premise data centers that okay, so I'll kind of outline like what's an underground cloud in concept here with this whole idea here. So if I'm talking about this idea of underground clouds, if basically you learn cloud by building underground cloud options or start projects, what this means is that wherever you start, you can just scale in any direction. So you can scale into public cloud, you can scale into more physical locations. We do both. We scale to multiple physical locations and to public cloud. You could do one, you could do the other. You run a whole business on either format. There's not really a wrong way to go about doing that, not with what we do. You can scale to Azure. We don't scale to Azure. You can scale to AWS. We don't scale to them either. We scale to more like smaller name people trying to make life happen. Not that much smaller. They're doing really well. But either way, you can scale in any direction that you prefer. So that's what's going on here. So once someone has like a GitLab account, then what does the underground Nexus look like? What would be running from your Docker? This runs out of a Docker environment or Kubernetes environment. And then it makes it so that your Visual Studio Code is, and resources, things like that, all your hookups, all your plugins, it centralizes all of that. And then it also gives you a center to test your applications, because you can test your applications because you have this, well, it's a full desktop environment. And then on top of that, it's easy. It's kind of like using a terminal server. So if anyone's used terminal servers for security purposes, things like that, it's kind of like a cloud native terminal server. That's kind of what it's like. I used to build terminal servers once upon a time, and then we used to build cloud apps, and it's like called like Office Aloft, and people would have like, it was right before Office 365 came and destroyed that product line, because Office 365 just did what we were trying to do so much better. But you learn. And you also learn that Microsoft will invalidate your products. So if you don't want your products invalidated by the giants, then you want to have ways to compete with them, like keeping your own costs down, making it so that it's easier and faster and more sustainable to do stuff, making sure that you know how to also be secure while building along the way, so that you don't get invalidated by Microsoft when you start building your products, because that happens. So anyways, you've never done a lot of business if you've never had one of the giants come and invalidate some of your developments in the past, or what you're trying to hopefully do or accomplish. So anyways, that kind of goes over everything that I'm doing. For those wondering, like, okay, so for those who already are in our GitLab environment, which it looks like this, right now we don't have the resources up yet. What you'll see is you'll see that we have the Cloud Underground. You'll see that we have our DevSecOps launch. There's not a whole lot going on here just yet because I'm packaging this. So right now what you're seeing is the code that's going into this. So you're looking at the code that's going in here. And for now, we're at, go ahead and just take some time and maybe just learn GitLab, spend some time with that. But we will be getting all of that code in here with guidance and instructions. I will also have free workshops, and you'll see videos show up on my LinkedIn, YouTube, all that good stuff. But you'll also, if you're in here, I'll have it all organized. This will be like the one-stop shop, like, oh, where do I get the code for this, or where do I get the code for that, or hey, how do I find all the projects, or oh, how do I find the Underground Nexus pull down so that I can just download it and install it, start working with it, start building some cloud, start learning some cloud with what you have. Don't go buy some servers unless you want to, unless you have the money for it or just feel like it's exciting. So, all right, well, anyways, I'm going to wrap this stream up. Thank you everyone who has been watching, and I appreciate you. I've put a lot of work into this, so I'm excited to show this. So thank you everyone who's both supported us and made this possible. This can be tossed anywhere, really. You can install it in AWS, in Azure, in your home office, on a Raspberry Pi, on anything. That's how we're designing this. It's being designed to be able to just install wherever you're doing your work, wherever you're doing your development, all that good stuff. So thanks for checking out our work. I've been working on this for way too long, and I guess we'll continue to just be working on it. So, and if once again, join the DevSecOps dojo if this sort of thing interests you. We are launching this by using, once again, crypto as like an entryway to be figuring out DevSecOps skills and how the economics and like, well, how do people make money with this? Well, how do people build products with this? Well, how do those products go to market? Well, how? Well, you can do it, and we'll guide you through it. And that's what the DevSecOps Dojo's for. We changed it to a guild type format. So the DevSecOps Dojo is officially going to operate in a guild style format. We will be running a number of events in this environment, including what we're calling drop squads. So drop squads are kind of like bug bounties, but at scale, designed for short-term projects with teams of 4, up to 4 people ideally, where we have people, where we can have diverse people, where we have people who might be good at different parts of development, and some who might be better at some of the project management. So someone who's skilled at the management, skilled at one kind of development, another kind of development, and then someone who's got another primary skill for whatever project is going on. So we want to make it so that it's easy to learn real world skills by actually doing real world work. So instead of like trying to do certs, you can just get to work. You want to do certs? Where do you want to get to work? Get to work for who? You. Because the stuff that we make is open source, which means when you pull it in and you're doing the work, it means that you own it. It's your open source code, and whatever you make, you own that too. And if you start earning crypto on it, you just made some crypto on something that you made and you own. And then if you start making some cash in the local currency, you're making cash in the local currency on something that you built, you made, and you learned by just getting to work instead of taking the certification route. And because it's like, I'm trying to, yes, we designed it after like a video game, like learn like as if the real world were an RPG. So we are building like project boards, all that stuff. So if you've ever played like something like an RPG, you have like side quests and stuff like that, and like job boards, and then you go and it actually works like that. We tested this out. So right now we trialed 2 people on short-term projects. And, you know, $100 an hour, it's not as much as some contracts, but $100 an hour to some people is a lot of money. Some people will be like, it's not $300 an hour. That's true. It's not $300 an hour. That's a standard rate that you see in cybersecurity a lot. But for people trying to just find jobs that are, you know, in the general equivalent of $100 an hour jobs, that's what we have been placing, and we'll probably continue to place more opportunities for things like that. So for people who do get really into it, start learning how to really make stuff, getting into drop squads, generating some crypto. You can make crypto and cash as an education medium. And then however much of it you get, it's not about the money for what we're doing, it's more about the skills. But if you remove the money out of what we're doing, you remove the economics lesson. And if you remove the economics lesson, then it removes an understanding of how value works. And one of the issues that I run into with people who do things like DevSecOps is they don't quite understand how value works in the general space, and they don't understand the value of their own skills. And one of the only ways I've found to truly understand the value of your own skills is to take your skills and put your own skills to the test for yourself. And when you start making your own money off of your own skills, it has nothing to do with the money. It's not about the money. It's about you got to work. You made something of your own, and then you put it out to the world, and people received it, and you learn something from that process and that journey. So that is what we're focused on at this time. Like I said, I appreciate you all. That kind of covers what I'm trying to accomplish here. So I'll check the chats one more time before I hop off. Yeah, people complain about some of the most random things. I get so many random complaints about stuff that makes no sense. People are like, well, that should cost money. Well, that shouldn't cost money. Well, I don't want to make money. Well, I do want to make money. I won't do anything that doesn't. It's like people just complain about like everything. I'm like, I can't worry about complaints. But yeah, it's so funny. People are interesting. It's been fun. Thank you everyone who's been dropping into these chats. Appreciate you all. So have a great holiday. Merry Christmas to everyone. This is like my gift to the world right now. Like I said, we pay a lot of money for everyone to be using this for free to all of you. It's most certainly not free for me. It's not free for me, but it's free for you. So Merry Christmas to all of you. Or Happy Holidays. If you don't do Christmas, then Happy Holidays. And if you don't do holidays, then here stuff that you don't have to pay for. Amazing.